Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our webinar about financial considerations related to the community eligibility provision. My name is Heather Hopwood, and I'm joined today by some great panelists, my colleague Ian Garrison, Heidi Dupuis from the Oregon Department of Education, and Susan Roberson, the School Nutrition Director for Richmond City Public Schools in Richmond, Virginia. We have a great webinar for you today. The slides for the webinar are available in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, and you can access those by clicking on the icon that looks like 3 little white pieces of paper. Today's webinar is also being recorded. It'll be available in a few weeks on our website. And here's the information that we'll be providing over the next hour. We'll talk about financial viability, give a demonstration of how to use our USDA Estimator tool, and share state and local experiences implementing the community eligibility provision. Finally, at the end, we'll have some time for questions. You can type your questions in at any time by clicking on the Q&A tab at the top of your screen. You don't need to hold them to the end, and then at the end, we'll read the questions aloud and answer as many as we can. So we want your CEP election to be successful, and so making a sound financial decision is important. CEP was phased in over 3 years in 10 states in the District of Columbia, and when we did an evaluation study of those participating districts, we found that the average identified student percentage was around 55% or higher. And we encourage you to take a look at the evaluation study that's available on our CEP website. We also encourage you to use the Estimator tool on our website, which lets you compare your federal reimbursement under standing operating procedures to an estimate of what your federal reimbursement would be under CEP. The tool also contains a grouping tool that lets you compare different groups and their identified student percentages. So with that, I'll turn it over to Yang to show us how the tool works. Yang? Great. Thanks, Heather. You can find the FNS CEP Estimator tool here, along with other resources related to CEP on our Community Eligibility Provision website that Heather just mentioned. As we mentioned on the March 4th publication and notification webinar, the deadline for when school districts must notify state agencies of their intent to adopt CEP for the 2015-2016 school year has been extended to August 31st. For school districts that are interested in adopting CEP, the Estimator tool can assist in estimating your potential federal meal reimbursements while participating in CEP. The tool is also helpful in determining school groupings that can provide you with both the highest ISPs and the highest allotments of federal reimbursement. As a reminder, when using the Estimator tool, remember that it is just that, an estimator, as it does not account for potential increases or decreases in food and labor costs, nor does it account for likely monthly fluctuations in school breakfast and lunch participation. Okay, so to get started, click on the Estimator tool located in the Technical Assistance section of this page to be taken to the Excel spreadsheet. This is the main sheet of the CEP Monthly Federal Reimbursement Estimator tool. You'll use this tool to estimate the level of federal reimbursements received under CEP. To the right of the main section of the tool is the grouping calculator, which I will walk through a little bit later. At the bottom of the screen, you will notice that there are 4 tabs. The main sheet is located on the Federal Estimator tab. To the left of the Federal Estimator tab, you will find the Instructions tab. Click here, and you will be taken to step-by-step instructions for using the CEP Estimator tool. I will be using the same instructions during my walkthrough of the Estimator tool, so as you use the tool on your own, please refer back to the Instructions tab for technical assistance and step-by-step instructions. To the right of the main Federal Estimator tab is the Reimbursement Rates tab. This tab is only to be used if you do not know the federal reimbursement rates for your SFA, which you will need in order to complete the steps in the Estimator tool.
You can also find the annual reimbursement rates on the main Federal Estimator tab located below the main section of the Estimator tool. The last tab is the tracking page. Use this sheet to track annual identified student percentages for CEP schools and school groupings prior to the first year of electing CEP and throughout your CEP 4-year cycle. Okay, so now let's go back to the main sheet by clicking on the Federal Estimator tab to begin the walkthrough of the Estimator tool. In the highlighted area, you'll find Step 1, calculating the identified student percentage. To complete Step 1, you will need the total number of identified students and enrolled students reflective of April 1st for the school or school groupings considering CEP. If you're unfamiliar with which students can be counted in your total number of identified students, click on the link in the highlighted box to the right to be taken to a clear definition of identified students. Identified students are defined as the students certified for free meals not through the submission of individual applications. This definition includes students directly certified through SNAP, TANF, and SDPIR participation, as well as homeless on the liaison list, Head Start, Pre-K Even Start, migrant youth, runaways, and non-applicants approved by local officials. Foster children certified through means other than an application are also included. Students who are categorically eligible based on the submission of a free and reduced price application, so for example, a submitted application with a SNAP number on it, are not included. The identified student percentage equals the number of identified students divided by the number of enrolled students multiplied by 100. For more information on identified students and calculating the ISP, visit the FNS Community Eligibility Provision website shown on the earlier slide. Okay, let's go back to the estimator to finish Step 1. For Steps 1.1 and 1.2, enter the number of identified students and the total student enrollment for an individual school or school grouping considering CEP. Again, if you are grouping schools, you should use the grouping calculator to the right of the Estimator tool in the Federal Estimator tab to assist you in determining the number of identified students and the total student enrollment for the school grouping. The grouping calculator can help you to determine the school groupings that can provide you with both the highest ISPs and the highest allotments of federal reimbursement. For now, we will focus on using the Estimator tool to determine the level of federal reimbursements received under CEP for an individual school. I will walk through how to use the grouping calculator a little bit later. So when you enter the identified student and total student enrollment data into the estimator, it will automatically populate the percentage of identified students, as you see here in this example. In this example, the number of identified students is 425, and the total student enrollment is 756. After this information is entered, the tool calculated that the percentage of identified students is 56.22%. The percentage of identified students must be at least 40% to be eligible to participate in CEP. If the percentage of identified students is below 40%, this box will turn red. As you see in this example, this school has an ISP well above 40%, which meets the eligibility requirement. Also automatically populated are the percentages of meals reimbursed at the federal free and paid rates. This is calculated by using the CEP multiplier of 1.6. Multiply the percentage of identified students by 1.6 to calculate the percentage of meals reimbursed at the federal free rate. 56.22% multiplied by 1.6 equals 89.9% of meals reimbursed at the federal free rate. The remainder of the meals, 10.1%, will be reimbursed at the federal paid rate. Now that you know how to calculate your identified student percentage and claiming percentages, let's move on to step 2, federal reimbursement rate. In step 2, select your SFA's current reimbursement rates for the National School Lunch and School Breakfast programs. Use the drop-down menu to select your current free and paid reimbursement rate. The Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act provides an additional 6 cents per lunch reimbursement to school districts that are certified to be in compliance with the new meal pattern. Select 6 cents in the next box if your SFA is certified for the additional 6 cents. If your reimbursement rates are not listed in the drop-down menu, enter your reimbursement rate in the Annual Reimbursement Rates table in the lower left-hand corner of the Estimator tool, located on the main Federal Estimator tab. Enter reimbursement rates in the blank cells under Other. In this example, the SFA receives the 2-cent lunch differential and severe need breakfast rate. Once these numbers are entered into the table, you can now select your reimbursement rate from the drop-down menu under the Other header. In this example, the SFA is also certified to receive the additional 6-cent reimbursement. If you do not know the federal reimbursement rates for your SFA, click in the highlighted area at the top right of the Estimator tool to be taken directly to the Reimbursement Rates tab. Use the Reimbursement Rates tab to calculate the reimbursement rates for your school lunch and school breakfast programs. If you need to use this part of the tool, you should verify your rates with your state agency to ensure that the rates that you enter into the Estimator tool are the correct ones for your SFA. Once this is complete, you can go back to complete step 2. Okay, let's move on to step 3, monthly meal data. Step 3 is where we will enter in forecasted monthly meal data for lunches and breakfasts that are served in a typical month. For steps 3.1 and 3.2, you will need the total number of lunches and breakfasts served in a typical month for the LEA, school, or group of schools considering the community eligibility provision. Here you can see that once the total number of lunches and breakfasts served in a typical month are entered, the tool will automatically populate the total number of meals served in a typical month, as well as the total number of lunches and breakfasts reimbursed at the federal free and paid rate. Once you complete step 3, the tool will automatically populate your estimated CEP monthly federal reimbursement. You can see that here in the highlighted area. In the highlighted area to the right, in green, you can take a closer look at the estimated monthly federal reimbursement based on the total number of meals served in a typical month provided in step 3. In the highlighted area to the left, you will see step 4. This step is not required, but if you anticipate that participation will increase or decrease due to all meals being served free, enter the estimated percent change in participation here. You can find more information regarding CEP impacts on student participation in the CEP evaluation study available on the FNS Community Eligibility Provision website. Research shows that serving all meals at no charge leads to increases in school meals participation. The CEP evaluation study impact results show that on average, CEP correlated with a 5.2% increase in school lunch participation and a 9.4% increase in school breakfast participation. So let's go ahead and anticipate this increase for your school lunch program and school breakfast program will occur. So as you see here in the example, the estimated CEP monthly federal reimbursements in the light green box on the right has been updated to reflect the anticipated participation change provided in Step 4 due to serving all meals at no charge. Again, these are just estimates, and we got these from the CEP evaluation study, which you can find along with other resources on our CEP website. The highlighted optional comparison box located below the light green box on the right displays the estimated difference between the estimated federal reimbursements operating under CEP and the current federal reimbursements and student payments. In the areas in white, enter the current monthly federal reimbursements plus student payments added together, and enter a total revenue for both the school breakfast and lunch programs. If the boxes in the lower right are bright green, then CEP is estimated to generate the same or more federal revenue. If the boxes in the lower right are red, then current procedures generate higher federal revenue. LEAs will need to assess the availability of non-federal sources to cover any meal costs above the federal reimbursement. In this example, CEP is estimated to generate higher revenues for both school lunch and school breakfast programs than the revenues generated by current procedures. So before I complete the walkthrough of the Estimator tool, let's go ahead and go back to the grouping calculator located to the right of the Estimator tool on the main Federal Estimator tab. If you plan on grouping schools, use the calculator to determine the number of identified students and total enrollment for the school grouping, which will need to be entered into Step 1 of the Estimator tool. Enter the school name of each school that will be grouped under the same identified student percentage. In the next column, enter the number of identified students for each school entered into the first column. Next, enter the number of students enrolled in each school entered in the first column. And so once you do that, the individual school identified student percentages will automatically be populated in the fourth column. So to the right of the columns is data for the school groupings needed to complete Step 1 of the Estimator tool. If you are using the Estimator tool for school groupings, the data on the right, including the total number of identified students in the group and the total number of students enrolled in the group, are what you will need to enter into Step 1 of the Estimator tool, all of which will be automatically populated once you enter the necessary school name, identified students, and enrollment data into the first three columns. Also automatically populated, highlighted in the green box to the right of the grouping calculator, is the identified student percentage for the school grouping. As I previously mentioned, this tool is helpful for determining the school groupings that can provide you with both the highest ISPs and thus the highest allotments of federal reimbursement. So as you enter your individual school data, pay close attention to the identified student percentage for the school grouping so that you can maximize the percentage of identified students and increase federal reimbursements for your SFA. Okay, so let me show you a quick example. Here we see data entered for example elementary, example middle, and example high school. If you notice, example elementary has an identified student percentage of 38.67%. This is below the 40% requirement to be able to participate in CEP. But when Example Elementary is grouped with Example Middle and Example High School, which both have ISPs well above the 40% eligibility requirement, the group of schools now have a combined ISP of 59.17%. In this school grouping, Example Elementary is now eligible to adopt CEP. Grouping these schools together also means that all of the schools will be calculated like an individual school in Step 1 of the Estimator tool, with shared data for total number of identified students, total number of students enrolled, and their identified student percentage. The highlighted area to the right now needs to be entered into Step 1 to begin using the Estimator tool for this school grouping. So after using the grouping calculator, here's what your spreadsheet should look like. The number of identified students, the total student enrollment, and the percentage of identified students highlighted on the right in the grouping calculator are the same as the numbers provided in Step 1, highlighted on the left. Once this is complete, you can proceed forward with completing the remaining steps as I demonstrated during this presentation. So with that, I will turn it back over to Heather.
Great. Thanks so much, Yang. Our next panelist is Heidi Dupuy, Manager of the School Nutrition Programs for the Oregon Department of Education. She's been with the Oregon Department of Education for 18 years, and she coordinates the activities of a 10-member team which provides compliance monitoring, technical assistance, and training to local program administrators. Heidi is a registered dietitian and holds a bachelor's degree in home economics, food systems management and home economics, and dietetics from Oregon State University. As a kindergartner, Heidi's now 20-something son described his mother's job as taking candy from boys and girls and telling them to eat fruits and vegetables. Heidi, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Heather. So welcome webinar attendees. I'm going to talk about some of the questions that as a state agency we field in regards to community eligibility. So the first, community eligibility has the potential to change the financial status of a school meal program. For those schools having an ISP of 62.5%, they achieve the long sought-after goal of universal meals, all meals reimbursed at the free rate. Like winning the lottery, this change in financial standing takes consideration in planning. Often the first question that we receive at the state office is, will CEP work for me? Initially, SFA can use the May 1 CEP Annual Notification of Schools report and their participation percentage of lunches and breakfasts served to free and reduced eligible students from the beginning of the school year through April for a comparison. Even if the participation percentage is higher by 5 to 10 points, it would still be in the SFA's interest to do a site-specific evaluation because the ISP may include students receiving benefits from extended direct certification, foster, migrant, homeless, and runaway services, which are all data points that the state agency may not have. If the school is considering CEP, and the school's considering CEP is participating in Provision 2 or 3, they would compare their current paid claiming percentage with the CEP paid claiming percentage. You can use the free claiming percentage from CEP, but you would have to go back to your base year data and create a combined percentage of free and reduced to make the comparison. Once an SFA has done their homework, if the ISP results in a higher claiming percentage than the using the regular program, they should elect CEP. And let's look at a calculation. So on the left-hand side, we have the data from the current year when they're using standard meal counting and claiming. So in this school, their free lunches equaled 4,875. Their reduced lunches were 576, the sum being 5,451. The total lunches served were 6,741, which gave them a free and reduced percentage of 80%. When they counted their identified students and created their identified student percentage, it was 42.25. Applying the multiplier of 1.6 gave them a free cleaning percentage of 67.6%. In this example, CEP would not necessarily be the choice because the free cleaning percentage was higher, but there can be other considerations in moving to CEP, which we'll cover later in the presentation. The second question that's frequently asked is how many more students will participate? To answer this question, you need to know the gap between the number of students participating and the eligibility. The gap is calculated for each benefit category by dividing the meals served by the number of eligible students times service days in the period being evaluated. This gap is also referred to as market share. The closer the market share is to 80%, the smaller the potential increase. In the example on the slide, most of the increase is going to be in the paid category. In the actual school used for the example, the paid student participation has increased 69.7%, and the free participation has remained the same. If the school is converting from Provision 2 or 3, there will be very little increase. The students are already receiving meals at no charge, so there's no change in the benefit to the student. The third question is what to do with all that additional revenue from free meal reimbursements. What a dilemma to have. CEP generates additional revenue, and one needs to be thoughtful about managing it. In general, the additional revenue will go towards two activities, financial stability and meal quality. Most SFAs want a program that provides nutritious, enjoyable meals to students with the least burden on the general educational fund. CEP may put the nonprofit school food service account in a financial position to pay its portion of indirect costs for the first time ever. This is an allowable program cost and helps our program play well with others in the organization. If the LEA begins charging a nonprofit school food service account for indirect costs, the financial decision maker for the program needs to know the costs that are in the indirect cost pool so that the program does not secure those services as a direct cost. An example might be computer support services. The second direction is to improve meal quality. When I say meal quality, the first thing that comes to mind is buying better food. That is a way, but meal quality is in the eye of the beholder, the eater and their parents. The SFA would be wise to assess impacts of meal quality for their participants. If it's a short line, serving whole muscle chicken nuggets is not going to have the anticipated impact. A key question to ask is, would I want to eat here? And then dig into the reasons why or why not. After you have your list of reasons, invest in ways to keep doing the positive ones and ways to change the negative ones. Staff, food service, and education can help develop the list, and students and parents can help prioritize. Staffing for increased participation, staff training, small equipment purchases, updating large equipment, and enhancing the eating environment are all ways to increase meal quality. And finally, question 4, what if the reimbursements won't cover the program costs? With CEP, you have savings from not having to do meal benefit determinations. These can include printing, postage, and handling the applications. As well, you can also add the after-school supper program with CACFP. you have an improvement of public perception, both on the educational staff as well as parents and community. And then you may need to get support from non-federal funds to support the meal program. And finally, the real benefit of doing CEP is to provide meals to kids. And I've been out in school this spring, and the atmosphere of schools offering CEP makes for a very relaxed eating environment. Kids just get to select their food and eat their meals, and there's no reminders about not having enough money in your account or needing to pay, or, so it's great. So now I'm going to turn it over to Susan, or back to Heather.
Great. Thanks so much, Heidi. Our next speaker is Susan Roberson, who is the Director of School Nutrition Services at Richmond Public Schools in Richmond, Virginia. Susan is dedicated to the advancement of school nutrition and oversees the administration of healthier meals to support the academic success for students in the city of Richmond, Virginia. She developed her love for school nutrition from Dallas Independent School District. She holds a bachelor's degree in food administration, majoring in general dietetics from Tuskegee University. So I'll turn it over to you, Susan. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome all participants here at the CEP webinar. We're excited in Richmond. We became a CEP school this year, and we had a very wonderful launching of that with all of our community partners and students and administration, where we actually declared ourselves as hunger-free schools. Just to tell you a little bit about our school system, we are a school system with approximately 23,582 students with 44 schools, fully functioning kitchens. Our schools are divided up between 27 elementaries, 8 middle, and 9 high schools. Currently this year we're serving about 11,000, almost 12,000 breakfast and almost 17,000 lunch. As you can see on the slide, 50% of our students are participating in breakfast this year, and 71% are participating in lunch. But let me tell you where we were prior to CEP. This year, as you know, all of our schools are CEP. Prior to CEP, we were a district with 76% free and reduced. 44% were participating in breakfast, and 62% were participating in lunch. But since CEP, participation has increased in breakfast by 12% and lunch by 13%. So we're seeing a significant increase in our participation as a result of CEP. Approximately last year this time, we began to do our homework on whether or not CEP was really going to work in Richmond. I have been an advocate and a cheerleader for CEP for several years as I watched the states around us have CEP. But it was time now to really look at the numbers and convince the administration, along with some principals and everyone, that this was going to work for us. So the first thing we did was we used the calculator, which you're familiar with that now because I heard that Yang explain that. And when we looked at the calculator, we compared our traditional reimbursement to what it would be with community eligibility. And we saw immediately that just based on last year, we would see an increased revenue of $51,000 approximately for our overall budget. Can we use that, or could we use that? Yes, we can. Our schools are in an urban environment, and we have great need for many things within the buildings that are 70 and 50-year-old buildings, with most of which have original equipment. Then we also went on and looked at the documents that we received from USDA, and then we discovered that our ISP number would be 61.77%. Well, we were looking for 62%, but we were not going to say no CEP. We decided that with 61.77% ISP number, that gave us a claiming percentage of 98.8% of our meals would be claimed at free reimbursement, and 1.2% would be claimed at the paid reimbursement. We think we can live with that, and we're also looking, hopefully, to be able to increase that to 62% once we review the numbers again at the end of this year. Other considerations that we looked at for CEP was, first and foremost, what was best for RPS students. Our superintendent was so supportive. He said it was a no-brainer. He said that what was best for our students, that they could have a hassle-free meal without going through the paper chase that we have been through for many, many years. No applications was a wonderful thought, a dream come true. We actually were able to reallocate 2 full-time equivalent staff into other duties, and we eliminated 3 to 4 clerical temps that would come in the beginning of the year and stay probably through February processing applications. We were able to eliminate the debt collection. We spent a lot of hours in the evenings contacting parents, generating letters, sending letters out, trying to collect payments for meals of the paid category and the reduced category. We didn't have to go through verification. And the staff in my office, most of them were very happy, and managers were happy also. So we really felt like and believe now that CEP is a win for Richmond Public Schools. But in addition to CEP, the data, we captured data, and we're looking at it now, and we're seeing that our enrollment really didn't increase too much, but it did increase a little. But we're able to see significant increases when we compare last year to our year-to-date, and you can see that in the data listed on the screen right now. Where we have seen the greatest increase and where it was really needed is in our middle schools. Participation this year in our middle schools for lunch has jumped to 80%. Our middle schools are grades 6 through 8, and we have 8 of them, and we're seeing those middle school students really taking advantage of being in the CEP program. And now we see that there was a stigma attached that they didn't even want to exercise their free eligibility that they may have had last year, and those that didn't have it weren't participating. In our next slide, where we're looking at our labor, we've noticed that our labor cost has decreased a little, and we're attributing it to the fact that we're doing more with less. Our meals per labor is not where we want it to be. Last year it was about an average of 14, and we had some schools that were much higher than that, and now we're seeing our average at 18, and we have some schools that are as high as 25 meals per labor hour. But what it's showing me, and it's showing our managers and staff, that they can do more through getting more efficient, retraining, and thinking how we deliver the meals to our students with the same amount of staff. Now, that might not be true for all of you, but it is true for Richmond. As we look at our reimbursement percentages, last year 94% were free, this year 97.6%. Last year, we've seen our breakfast revenue, as you can see here in the comparison, our breakfast revenue as of January is twice what it was last year. And our lunch, because of some snow days, the numbers aren't really where they probably would be, but we've had some number of snow days here in Virginia. But we definitely have seen our reimbursement revenue and our participation increase. We look at our schools, we've been comparing, looking at breakfast, trying to see if we can see the CEP breakfast versus the non-CEP. And as you can see, we've seen some elevations in our breakfast based on non-CEP year versus CEP year. When we look at lunch, we're seeing the same increase. So overall, CEP has been a win-win both at breakfast and lunch for us. In addition to having CEP, we have breakfast in the classroom, which the two programs do complement each other. Now, last year we did have breakfast in the classroom. We had 7 schools. You'll notice we didn't have any middle schools last year. This year we have 7, and we have 3 that are pending, so that by the end of this year we're looking to have at least 1 high school on breakfast in the classroom. And we're very excited about that. But by having breakfast in the classroom, and really it will be breakfast after the bell, having it with CEP will make it a very smooth transition because we will not have to worry about students' eligibility as they come through the line. We will be accounting for every meal using our point-of-sale system because we have not eliminated that from our system. However, it won't be as much of a focus on as it has been in the past because we know that the students do know their numbers because everyone's wanting to eat. So everyone has been very motivated to learn what their PIN number is. But here is a summary of our breakfast in the classroom for this year, last year, and for what we're anticipating next year. Breakfast in the classroom has increased with CEP, and here's the numbers. We're excited to be a recipient of the Breakfast in the Classroom grant, which is definitely going to help us be able to expand our program. But we have found that breakfast is really increasing, and students are very excited across the board. And as I stated about lunch, the middle schools are really catching on to participating in the meal, including both meals, including breakfast. We have 81% of our students participating in breakfast and 80% participating at lunch at our one only middle school, which has breakfast in the classroom. Breakfast in the classroom was also a no-brainer, and our staff easily adapted to it. This is just how excited our staff is about packing up the meals for breakfast in the classroom. We actually have 2 models that we use. We either use direct classroom delivery or we use breakfast through a kiosk. But either way, our students are really enjoying having the social time with their friends and having their breakfast ready very quickly so that they can proceed into their academic day. And we found both breakfast in the classroom and CEP to be a win-win for Richmond Public Schools. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Susan. It's great how you all have gotten creative with your breakfast delivery. We appreciate you sharing your story with us. We have about 10 minutes left during our webinar for Q&As. If you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A box on the webinar tool. If you'll bear with us just a moment, we'll go ahead and take a look at these and then answer them. Thank you. Okay, the first question is the number of students figure and the total student enrollment figure the FTE or the head count? I'm assuming you mean the number of identified students figure, and that would be, I'll refer you, if you look at a Q&A document on our website, we have a question number 18, tells who are the identified students. As Yang mentioned during the Estimator tool walkthrough, there's also a definition in the Estimator tool. But the identified students are the number of students who are approved as eligible for free meals and not subject to verification. And that includes students who are directly certified through SNAP, TANF, and the Food Distribution Program on Indian Reservations participation, and also homeless students on the liaison list, Head Start, Pre-K, Even Start, migrant youth, runaways, and then non-applicants that are approved by local officials. The enrolled students, that's addressed by question number 19 in the Q&As, and the enrolled students means students who are enrolled and attending schools participating in CEP who have access to at least one meal service daily. So they could have access to the school breakfast or school lunch daily to be included in the enrollment number. Next question, can the state SNAP agency provide documentation for students to be included in the identified student percentage? The answer is yes. School districts can work with state SNAP agencies to get documentation to substantiate including students in the ISP. You can't contact households to obtain SNAP letters, but you can work directly with the state SNAP agencies to get that information. Next question. The tool in the presentation does not look like the updated tool that was provided by our USDA regional office. We did do some updates to the tool last summer to reflect the new reimbursement rates and add the grouping calculator. So the tool didn't change dramatically. It may look very similar, but the tool that we demoed today is the most updated tool that's available on our website, and those were the last updates that were made last year. Next question, how do we get slides for this presentation? The slides are available in the upper right-hand corner. There's an icon that looks like 3 little pieces of paper, and you can download the slides there. Next question is, how does CEP impact Title I and E-rate? Again, we've worked very closely with other federal agencies, including the Department of Education and the Federal Communications Commission, to provide guidance for how CEP schools can allocate and meet Title I requirements, and also calculate E-rate discounts. So we do have a fairly extensive guidance document on allocating Title I available on our website. Basically, the allocations that go to school districts are done using census data. So the total pot of money that goes to each school district isn't impacted by CEP participation in most cases. That pot of money doesn't change because it's based on census data. CEP can impact within district allocations that go to each school, and the guidance provides several alternatives to using household applications, including using the direct certification number, the direct certification number times the 1.6 multiplier, or the identified student percentage times the 1.6 multiplier, or survey data if you're in a state where they've mandated collecting an alternate income form. The guidance walks through several examples of how to do those calculations and what the allocations would look like for within district funding to schools. So I would encourage you to take a look at that. And if you have any further questions, please feel free to contact your state agency or us here at USDA. Next question, what resources do we use to identify the ISP? Where do we get the information? The ISP, as Ayang showed in the walkthrough of the Estimator tool, is based on the identified students. So you would work with your state SNAP agency or your human services agency to determine the schools who would be directly, or students who would be directly certified for free meals. So that involves some information sharing and relationship building between agencies to get that information. Also, work with your district's homeless liaison, or sometimes working with the court systems is involved to certify foster children and include them in the identified student percentage. So the information comes from a variety of sources, but basically these are students who are eligible for free meals anyway, and those are who are included in the identified student percentage. Next, what qualifies a district to receive the additional 6 cents? The 6 cents is available to school districts who meet the new or updated meal pattern requirements, and your state agency can certify you to receive those additional funds. How are the breakfast in the classroom meals tallied or rung up when delivered to each classroom? I think it varies based on the school district. As Susan mentioned, they're using their point of sale system. Susan, are there any other ways that your schools take meal counts when you do breakfast in the classroom?
Yes, we're using our point-of-sale system at the kiosk, and in the classroom, we're using a bar-coded roster so that when the meals are there, the teacher will then check them off, and then the rosters return to the cafeteria where we're able to scan it because it's a barcode, and then that's how the counts go into our point-of-sale system.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Next question, can we send our estimator to someone to assure we figured correctly, or is there someone we can call? Your state agency should be able to help you ensure that you have the numbers entered correctly and that you're using the right information in the estimator. Each state has its own application process for determining, CEP participation, but typically that involves ensuring that your identified student percentage is correct and verifying that your numbers are correct. How are districts getting answers in regards to Title I funding with CEP? As I mentioned, we have some extensive guidance that we've worked very closely with the Department of Education to develop on Title I. If there are specific questions you have that aren't answered in that guidance, please float them up to USDA through your state agency. If your state agency can't answer them, or if it's something that hasn't been answered yet, we will work with the Department of Education to continue developing that guidance as we need to. Next question is about breakfast in the classroom and kiosks. Susan, this is another one for you. Did you have an employee who entered each child's number for claiming purposes, or was that all handled through the barcode system?
I think that you said about the kiosk. At the kiosk, when the students go by the kiosk, they enter their PIN number into the PIN pad. Is that what you're asking at breakfast when we use the kiosk?
Yep.
And then, right. So we have a PIN pad, and then in some schools we're using a clicker. And when the students go through the line, they're either entering their number in, depending on the school. We have different models out there, but at the kiosk there's a point of sale.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next question, do we have to have both breakfast and lunch, or can we do breakfast only? To participate in community eligibility, you do have to offer both breakfast and lunch to students. Susan, we have another question for you. Do you know why the breakfast percentages were higher than lunch rates for the breakfast in the classroom program?
Well, we believe that the reason the breakfast participation is higher, is that what she's asking about, the higher participation?
Yeah. Yep, the higher participation.
Right, because students now are engaging in breakfast because it's in front of their faces if it's in breakfast in the classroom, as opposed to them coming to the cafeteria and deciding, I'm just going to sit down rather than engage by going to the line. Mm-hmm. So participation is higher because they have an opportunity to have breakfast right there, and they can still socialize with their friends, as opposed to making a choice to just sit down and chit-chat.
Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. We have another question for you, Susan. Wondering if you had any challenge getting numbers for your Department of Education to use for allocating other programs, like any kind of state funding or other education funding?
Well, a year ago, we made available to the other departments of the Title I and various other departments in our school system various resources so that they would know where they would get their data, since school nutrition would no longer collect data. So they have taken upon themselves, the other departments, to secure data through the State Department and other avenues, because we no longer track the free and reduced percentages. So we haven't had a problem because we have informed as well as provided every resource that has come across my awareness of where the Title I persons and other persons in our district and community need to go to be able to get economically disadvantaged data for our students, but we're not collecting it within our department.
Thank you. Next question, we would like to evaluate each of our schools individually and then by groups. Is it possible to create and not impact the formulas, or is it recommended to use the form and save each individually? In order to not impact the formulas, we recommend that you save each individually to compare those. Any suggestions on how a state would dispense state funding specific to reduced price meals? That's one of the biggest challenges with implementing CEP, and something that some states have already worked through. Some states have decided to collect an alternate income form to capture the same income information that would be collected on a school application. Certainly we know that negates some of the administrative benefits of CEP, and so we're encouraging folks to explore other data sources to allocate that money, including other poverty measures. If any of you are considering one or find something that's wonderful and you'd like to share your success story with us, we'd love to hear about it. But certainly that is one of the biggest challenges that folks are working through with community eligibility. Where can we find the Title I information, and how can we start breakfast in the classroom? You can find the Title I information on our website, and we also have a great school breakfast toolkit that's available on the USDA Food and Nutrition Service website that will help you walk through a needs assessment and figure out the programs that will work best in your district and how to get started and get buy-in from all your stakeholders. We are a few minutes after 2 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and wrap up. And if we didn't answer your question, I apologize. We'll try to follow up with you individually after the webinar. Just want to make you all aware of our next CEP webinar, which will be on April the 15th, and the topic will be outreach to eligible districts. So we hope you can join us for that. The connection information will be forthcoming on PartnerWeb. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much to our panelists, and we hope you all have a wonderful afternoon.